Should be live now.
Good evening, everyone. It is Friday, and we are super excited to be back again this week for another chat with our very famous Dr. Google, Coach Carla, the transformation coach. Good evening. My name is Ruth Presley, and we have been doing this call for about 8 or 9 years now, and I'm excited because I know my friend has something to say and that will enlighten us and take us to new heights in our health. So, just very briefly, we're a part of a company, a community known as the Juice Plus community. Juice Plus has been around since 1993. However, the company, formerly known as NSA, began in 1970 under the great leadership of Jay Martin, who introduced smoke detectors in the US in 1970. We went into air filtration and water filtration. And then in 1993, with a divine connection between Dr. Smokey Santillo and the Juice Plus crew, Juice Plus was born. I'm going to turn it over to my friend and she's going to share. Carla, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much. I just have to get back to the right view. I'll be able to um, uh, to get started. Okay, great. Hello, everyone. I'm so glad that you're here, and um, I look forward every week to spending this time with you. Thank you, Ruth Presley. I don't know. Oh, yes, I see how to remove that pin. So we're all set now. Great. I'm glad that you're here this evening. I'm Coach Carla Joy, and I'm excited about being able to be here every week. I'm so glad that we have this type of technology so that we could spend this time together. One of my mentors, Dr. Michael Greger, says, "Why aren't we all on cholesterol lowering drugs?" What is he talking about? Well, before I jump into answering his question, I'd like to tell you a little bit about why we're here. We already heard that we're part of a community that inspires healthy living around the world. But what brought me here? I started this journey when my doctor gave me a diagnosis. Has anyone had a diagnosis? Well, it was scary for me. She told me I had high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and prediabetes. Because of the training program that I was in, I knew that I had become a statistic. I knew that I was at risk for the 15 most common causes of death. I knew that I was in trouble. I panicked, but then I prayed. And then I went on a journey because I wanted to experience within myself something that I had never seen. In all the rotations that I had attended, all the hospitals I'd been to, famous hospitals in Washington, D.C. and surroundings, I had never seen anyone recover from the diagnosis that I'd just described. Oh, they may have felt better and their numbers may have gone down a little bit, but nobody ever really got better. So I was asking for something that I'd never seen. I was praying to be completely cured. And um, it took me some years of searching, of trying different things, of speaking with Ruth Presley and finding out what she had done to improve her health. And then my goddaughter introduced me to the documentaries Forks Over Knives and to the work of my mentor, my other mentor, Michael Greger, where he talks about the science behind reversing the 15 most common causes of death. And I finally had hope. I realized that I could change my destiny, that I was not a victim of my family, my genetics, my environment. I could do something. And it turned out, based on his research, that I could change my health outcomes by changing my lifestyle. But the biggest change would come if I changed the way I ate. So that was the solution for me. I started eating more fruits and vegetables. I started eating more grains and more legumes, peas and beans. I had to cut out some things like Doritos, my favorite chip. And I had to cut out a lot of the junk food that I was eating. But by changing how I ate and by being introduced to concentrated fruits and vegetables and capsules and the complete shake that we'll talk about in a few minutes, I actually went from a diagnosis to having what my doctor said was a clean bill of health. Now, most doctors don't know a lot about the role of nutrition. So my doctor felt um, that that was all she had to do. Tell me, oh, your labs are good, off you go. But I needed more help. And the reason I'm telling you this story is because when we look at labs and when we look at lab values, they can be very helpful, but they don't always tell the whole story. And I want you to have hope that you can reverse your health situation. You could reduce the risk of the health problems that are so common in the United States, and that you don't have to feel like a helpless victim. There are things that you can do. So, back to Dr. Greger and his comment, why aren't we all on cholesterol lowering drugs? The reason he mentioned this was research over the years has indicated that LDL cholesterol is harmful if it is high in circulating in our blood. And so the researchers had come up with standards or targets. And first it was something like 120, then it went down to 100, then it went down further, and then it got down as low as 30. So the number, the thought behind it was the lower the LDL cholesterol, the healthier. How low should we go? That's a question for another day. But drugs were developed that seem to have a lowering effect on the amount of cholesterol floating around in the body, because these drugs, these statin drugs, they block an enzyme that in the liver where and it causes the liver to pull cholesterol out of the blood. So with that enzyme blocked, the liver needs the cholesterol to come out of the blood so it can continue doing what it usually does with the LDL cholesterol. So you may be thinking about drugs like atorvastatin, fluvastatin, lovastatin, and there's a whole range of them. But whatever the name of the drug, they are marketed because they can lower the risk of heart attacks, strokes, cancer, if you can lower the amount of the cholesterol. However, as with most pharmaceutical drugs, they have side effects. And these include muscle pain, GI upset, mental effects like memory loss and confusion, liver damage and a condition called rhabdomyolysis. Both are severe, but they are rare. One in hundreds of thousands of people actually ever get those side effects, but they are possible. And type 2 diabetes is also one of the possible side effects. Now, when you hear about these side effects, the question is, well, how do I make a decision about using these statins, these cholesterol lowering drugs? And there's actually a protocol for these drugs to be recommended. So Dr. Greger describes some of the components of that protocol. I'll go over them briefly. One is they should be prescribed for people who are at very high risk. So if you're cholesterol is high and there are other components of your health which put you at risk for heart attacks, stroke, for cancer, then it would be recommended by your physician that you take these drugs. They should, however, make you well aware of the side effects so that you can make an informed decision. The second group of people who would be recommended for this drug would be those who have already had some cardiovascular event, like a heart attack. And then there are others who do not have signs and symptoms of heart disease, but they have an LDL higher than 140, then they would be recommended for a cholesterol lowering drug. If the person also had diabetes, they may be recommended for a statin lowering drug. And if they didn't have diabetes, but their LDL was between 75 and 190, and they had a high risk, then they would be recommended. Well, how do you know what your risk is? I'm glad you asked. Dr. Greger says that there are several risk calculators available on the market, but he recommends something called U Prevent. That's U Prevent, a risk calculator that can give you an idea of your 10-year risk. So if you're thinking about having a discussion with your physician, and remember, the information that we share with you does not take the place of a conversation with your physician. It is information that you can use to have that conversation. Please do not make changes to your medication or to plans for a procedure without speaking to your doctor about this information and having a real dialogue about what their recommendations should be for you. But if you're having that dialogue and you're trying to make a decision about whether or not to take these medications, Dr. Greger says it's important to know that when a survey showed that people believed that these drugs were 100 times more effective than they really are. And one of the reasons for that is that very often the benefit of drugs, not just these drugs, not just the statins, not just cholesterol lowering drugs, but the benefit of many drugs are described in relative risk terms. And not to belabor it and not to get into statistics, but it's almost as though you're comparing the risk instead of looking at the absolute risk, looking at the absolute numbers. So the benefit of a statin is usually less than 5% risk reduction in 5 years. And that, in fact, the actual calculated value was 3.1%. The most effective statin, 3.1% over 6 years. Now, if you compare that with whole food plant-based eating, and remember, whole food plant-based eating would be at least 90% of your calories coming from plants. That is vegetables, fruit, legumes, and grains, legumes being peas and beans. No dairy products. It's going to be high in fiber, low in fat. Water is your main drink. The whole food plant-based eating plan lowers your risk by 60% over 4 years. That's so many more times. Compare 3% over 6 years and 60% with whole food plant-based eating over 4 years. Based on the work of Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, 99.4% of the people who would follow a whole food plant-based diet would remove the risk of getting heart disease and stroke. And it would also reverse the progression I was speaking with someone who's been diagnosed with a condition, and I explained to them that whole food plant-based eating has scientifically been proven to reduce the risk of getting the disease. And they said, well, I already have it. What they didn't know, didn't understand, and I had to explain, was that not only does whole food plant-based eating reduce the risk in the case of heart disease by 60% over 5 years, it also slows the progression of disease. And in the case of heart disease, and you can look at the work of Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, it can reverse heart disease. It can reverse blockages to the arteries. And it does it, the risk reduction of whole food plant-based eating over cholesterol lowering drugs is more than 20 times better. So as you are making your decisions, keep these things in mind, because that's what we want you to have. Make an informed decision. If you make the decision to go ahead and take one of these drugs that are supposed to help you, you may be in a high risk category. Your doctor's trying to protect you from having a heart attack or stroke. So have that discussion, but also know that there's something that you can do that can reduce your risk even further. And more than reduce the risk, it can slow the progression of and even reverse the disease. Okay. Now, why does that really mean so much to me today? How many of you have heard of, have met, or have experienced sciatica? You're asking, where's she going with this? I was shocked to realize that so many people, when I explained to them my experience of May 29th, when I had what seemed to be an excruciating, extreme attack of sciatica, they had also had an experience that sounded similar, radiating pain down the leg that was unremitting, unrelenting. You couldn't stand or sit or lie or get comfortable. It was just so painful. So many people had that experience. And it turns out, based on the presentation by Dr. Michael Greger, that 1 in 5 persons has had an experience of sciatica. And actually, 1 in 10 persons has led to disability, and that back pain is one of the #1 causes of disability in the workforce. Well, what is going on here? It turns out that research shows that back pain and related sciatica may be connected with the same problem: high cholesterol, atherosclerosis. In fact, angiograms and x-rays and MRIs from live persons and autopsies have shown that the pain associated with sciatica may be caused by atherosclerosis, blockage of the arteries around the spine, the lumbar and sacral spine. The MRIs showed degeneration of the discs, but they also showed decreased blood flow because of plaque formation and an increase in cholesterol. Now, the discs between your vertebrae, the vertebrae are the bones that make up the spine. The discs themselves are avascular. There are no blood vessels actually penetrating into the disc. So they have to absorb their nutrients from blood vessels close by. So they're very vulnerable. And the radiography illustrates, and of course the autopsies as well, that, excuse me, that the occlusion of those arteries, the blockage of those arteries with atherosclerosis, leads to the degeneration and even the herniation of these discs. And in addition to that, that they lead to nerve root damage. So there may be other factors involved in back pain, back spasms, bulging discs, but there is no doubt now that the same atherosclerotic process that leads to heart attacks and occlusive strokes is also taking place in the very narrow arteries of the spine. And they're leading to disc degeneration, to herniation, and to nerve root damage. So the connection between sciatica and cholesterol is that it's possible that back spasms and sciatica can be predictive of persons with elevated cholesterol because they of the occlusion of the arteries and may predict people who have a higher risk of heart disease, heart attacks, or stroke. The whole process, when you occlude the discs, it means that the blood vessels, it means the discs don't get enough nutrients, but also that the toxins from the natural activity of the cells around the discs, the toxins aren't taken away, so lactic acid builds up. And this can be seen as early as in teenagers, kids from 11, preteen and teenagers, and it's becoming more and more common. So that's the bad news. What's the good news? The good news is that these processes are reversible. The research shows, and Dr. Greger in his presentations, if you'd like to go to nutritionfacts.org, you can get some of his presentations that explain these processes and show you the research. But all of these processes the risk can be reduced, the processes can be slowed, and even in some cases reversed if we can make the lifestyle changes. And the biggest lifestyle changes that we can make is to change our diets to one that is whole food, plant-based. I know many of us have very busy lives, and we feel pressured into, how do I even make the change? I'm glad you asked. You can make one simple change by speaking to someone who invited you to this presentation, and we can introduce you to the Juice Plus products. You may already be familiar with the capsules, the fruit, the vegetables, and the berries. And you may be familiar with our complete shakes. That's protein, it's plant protein with fiber and vegetables. You may also be familiar with our superfoods. That's the 30 fruit, the 10 fruit, 10 vegetables, 10 berries that are picked at the peak of ripeness. They are flash frozen, concentrated into powders, and you can just add it to water so that you can get 30 more fruits and vegetables in your eating plan. And you may also be familiar with our gut support, where we have the super biome, where you can take the probiotics in a delayed release capsule. So that means that the bacteria are not wiped out as they pass through the gut, and the fibers that support the gut bacteria, so that you have the probiotics, which are the bacteria in the capsules, you have the prebiotics, which are the fibers, and together they give you the postbiotics, which are the short chain fatty acids that improve our health. So all of these working together, and of course the luminate, to help you stay focused and give you energy and help you stay calm, all of these working together can help you jumpstart your healthy living journey. You see, eating whole food plant-based is the only researched form of eating that supports your body's ability to heal. And the Juice Plus products, although we can't claim that they heal or treat any condition, it's a jump start to adding more fruits and vegetables, grains and peas and beans to your eating plan so that no matter what your diet looks like, you can start giving your body what it needs to begin the healing process. Now, I'd like you to ask the person who invited you to come back and give you some more information. We have lots of videos that they can give you their link so that you can have access to more of the videos and you can make informed choices about adding more fruits and vegetables to your eating plan. I hope that tonight's information has been helpful. You know, when I suffered that back spasm in May of this year, I was scared. I don't know if you've ever had the kinds of pain that sciatica can produce, but now I know that being consistent with a whole food plant-based eating plan can protect me from that kind of experience. It can protect my blood vessels. It can lower my cholesterol. It can improve my numbers. And this we know because of the high quality research that's done on the Juice Plus products. I'm not making claims that are not substantiated by the research. So ask the person who invited you to this video and we can share more, and we have medical professionals who can share more and answer some of your questions. I hope that this has been helpful because now you know that you don't have to be a helpless victim. You can participate in your healing process. And even though you have a busy lifestyle, you too can make a difference in your health outcomes. So if my friends can unmute and say what we always say at the end of one of these sessions.
Eat more
Eat more
fruits and
fruits and
vegetables.
vegetables. And we can help you do that. So ask us how. Thanks for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you next